All right, it's 6:30 on the dot, and we are streaming live. Welcome to all of those that are joining us. We'll give you a few extra minutes for those that are just logging in. Welcome to Bishop Kelly's virtual town hall. I'm Mike Caldwell, Bishop Kelly Principal, and joining me is Rich Ramondi, our president. Rich, you want to test your audio real quick?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual town hall, our second one this summer.
So just in terms of logistics, if you're just joining us, we're obviously broadcasting live through YouTube. So you should have the ability to do live chat. We do have someone monitoring our live chat. When we get to Q&A, we'll have some opportunities to share some of those questions and respond to those. We do have some questions or some questions that we'll go over at the end and hopefully answer most of your questions along the way. So we'll start in just a few minutes. Rich, it's a couple of minutes after 6:30. Do you want to go ahead and start? Looks like
Mike, I'll take it from
a little
here,
over
okay?
200 people watching right now.
All right. Good evening, Bishop Kelly community. This is Rich Ramondi coming to you from Bishop Kelly High School. I'm joined tonight by Mike Caldwell, our principal, and by Katie Hayes, our director of communications and marketing. Katie will be monitoring the chat window, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Thank you so much for coming and for your interest in Bishop Kelly and our instructional plan. I want to walk through the agenda that we'll be working tonight. We'll start with what I just did was welcome you all. And we're going to start with a prayer as we do all major events and gatherings we have at Bishop Kelly. I want to do a brief summary of our 2021 instructional plan, which we shared with you at our June 17th virtual town hall and has been on the website since that time. And I know many of you have looked at it and given us very good feedback. I'll share a little bit of that with you. We want to walk through our thinking and the alternatives we considered given we are in Ada County in stage 3, which is often called the red zone. What we consider to be very transparent and honest with our thinking and why we have arrived at which will be item 4, which is our phase reopening plan. And we'll wrap it up with our Q&A. All participants at this point will be on mute. We ask that you submit your questions via the live chat to Mike and Rich, and actually Katie will be monitoring that, and we'll answer those at the end or as we go if we can. Please know the session is being recorded and will be up on bk.org tomorrow, along with some other information with that. And finally, at the end, you'll be sent a brief follow-up survey to provide feedback and ask any additional questions. So, Mike, anything I missed you want me to talk to? Good to go?
Just looking forward to sharing our plan and just know that there's been a lot of people working really hard on this, and there's no blueprint to get here. It's been a long road over the summer and since last spring to work through and develop a plan that we feel really good about. And just want to thank Gina at the Central District Health and so many other people that have helped guide our plan and also be there when we have difficult questions to answer and those types of things that I know we'll have more to come, but there's a lot of people that have contributed to this from our perspective. Thank you.
So the prayer I'm going to share with you this evening is a very appropriate prayer. It's called A Prayer for Those Who Work with Young People, whether that's at home as parents, whether that's educators and staff members here at the school. We all work with children, and we have never worked with them through a pandemic. So this is, I think, a very appropriate. So if you would join me in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. We are your servants. Wherever you want me to go, I will go. Point the direction. Show me the way. You called me to work with your young people. They want to hear your voice, even when they don't show it. They want to know you. Help me show them who you are, even when I experience doubt. Send me enthusiasm when I don't feel enthusiastic. Send me patience when I'm out of it. Send me humility and courage to lean on others. Send me ears to hear the things that aren't being said. Send me eyes to see beneath the surface. Send me words to say when they ask the hard questions. Give me the ability to laugh at myself when I make a mistake. I am your servant, God. Where you want me to go, I will go. Point the direction. Show me the way. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So as we shared with you on the 17th of January and have continued to focus on, these are the 4 goals that we set out for the 2021 school year. First is to make the learning experience exceptional for all BK students and faculty and staff. And I would highlight the word exceptional. And it's really important at the end of the day, we are a school, and that's what we're about. We're a school that you families, you parents pay for your students, your sons and daughters to come, and it's up to us. And I think we do a great job at that, and we know we can continue to get better, and we believe we can continue to do that through this pandemic. Secondly, we want to build a plan that provides flexibility, adaptability, and options for our students, faculty, staff, and our school. We don't have all the answers, and plans will change and continue to change and adapt as we begin the school year. So we want a plan that allows us to do that for all the members of our community. Number 3, and not number 3 in priority, but number 3 goal is to keep our students, faculty, staff, and community safe and healthy as we navigate our way through this difficult time. And finally, we want and need to engage our parents and communities and as partners to the overall learning experience of our students. We're going to have some specific asks of you tonight because we cannot do this alone. What we do in school is what we can control, but what happens outside of school and your volunteering and time to help us to do this will improve the overall learning experience of our students. So with that in mind, Mike and his team, working with me and many others in the school, shared with you just a little over a month ago, the 6 key strategies for the instructional plan that we launched in June. First and foremost, we wanted to have a safe model that had all students and staff on campus on a daily basis. That's a big ask and an important strategy because we feel learning best happens in the school with face-to-face, with teachers and students interacting. Secondly, though, in this pandemic, we need to make sure we establish appropriate, safe distancing protocols. You'll hear us refer to these as the 3 W's in just a moment. in classrooms, in halls, in gathering spaces, on the athletic fields, in the gyms, and quite frankly, outside of the school environment. So to do that, as you recall, we've taken our average class size from 21 down to 16, which means we have hired 6 full-time, 4 part-time, and reassigned a number of faculty members to be able to do that, because we have to have more sections for each of the classes we offer, so we can bring that class size down to 15 to 16. And as you recall, that was an investment of, along with the PPE, of over $485,000 to make that happen. And that's not something we're passing on to our parents. That wasn't in our original plan, but we have found ways to fund that, and we will continue to do that. And we have hired, I think with maybe one exception now, Mike and team are through the hiring. We're beginning the orientation for our new faculty and staff members. Thirdly, that caused us to rethink and maximize all the physical space on campus, whether it be what the library is used for, what the reg is used for, how we do the Carly Center, what classrooms work best, how can we take stuff that we don't need out of classrooms to get students in desks 6 feet apart or more with teachers in a place that they can teach and be successful and safe. Fourth, we wanted to make sure we had time for flexibility and autonomy during the school day for students to spend time in areas of need. Very important as we go through this time. Fifth was to provide additional time during the week for faculty to prep, plan, train, and collaborate, particularly as we may find ourselves at times having to go virtual. We may find ourselves at times with classes, we're at 85-minute class. Mike will talk a little bit about that. We need to be able to do that. And finally, we need to use technology to help support our goals. And you'll see some things we'll talk about here in just a little bit where we think we have a plan on how to best use it. And this has come to the forefront as we've now faced a situation where we will be entering into more substantial community spread in Ada County. So Mike, please, is there anything I missed there, or any points you would like to make in the key strategies as you and your team led us through this?
I don't think so. I think maybe just a couple comments on number 2. We still have some fine tuning to go in terms of classrooms and their actual size, and we have everything written on paper and students scheduled for classes and those types of things, but that getting fine tuning those numbers that are in each class is still underway over this week and next week, and those types of things. And we have some other, safeguards in place if in rare cases that we have, we plan for 16 and we have 17. In those cases, we're planning for, some plexiglass barriers and those types of things to accommodate those types of things. I'd also say in addressing key strategy number 5 is a trade-off. When we look at our schedule, and what we put together this year with our AB schedule, this was a bit of a compromise in that in order to allow additional time, which we felt was really necessary when we're asking our faculty to become online instructors or blended learning instructors and to work with both, kids that are out for a number of days for illness or quarantine or whatever the case may be. We felt that adding additional time in our day was really important for faculty prep, planning, training, etc. And we also had to add additional time in the passing periods. When you look at our schedule that we have 10-minute passing periods as opposed to 5-minute passing periods. I say all that to say, if you look at total instructional time, it was a trade-off. We do lose some instructional time over the course of the school year because of this trade-off. We see it as a temporary trade-off. We don't see this as a long-term, year in, year out plan, but it's something as we looked at putting together a plan that we felt was the right thing, the right trade-off for this year in order to make the instructional model work best and maximize the time we have, but also utilizing some of that with faculty training. So,
thank you, Mike. So when we surveyed you post the last town hall on June 17th, and ask you a number of questions, but the one that I think was most relevant to tonight's discussion is thinking about returning to school in August based on the 2021 plan. Do you still plan on sending your child to Bishop Kelly in August? And when we surveyed you back a month before, following the virtual learning experience we had the last 2 months of the 2019-20 school year, 16% of you weren't sure, and about a 0.5% didn't think so. Well, you gave us incredible positive feedback with some ideas on how to make it even better. And when we asked you again in August, would you, based on the plan you saw in June, would you send your son or daughter back to BK? 94% of you said yes, and 6% of you said uncertain, and no one said no. So that was very affirming to us that we had a plan that you felt good about. However, in the 2 months since that time, we have gone from what is called the yellow minimal to moderate spread to one where on Monday was declared substantial spread of the COVID-19 in our communities. So we step back. Our original category 3, this red category plan, was we would go all virtual. But we relooked at it over the last couple of days and last couple of weeks as we were thinking about this and said, is that really the right alternative? So what I'm sharing you here is very transparent, what our thinking has been, and how we arrived at what we're going to share with you a little later today. So the first alternative we looked at was what our existing stage 3 plan had been back in June, that we would start virtually until we were out of the red zone. In our analysis and discussion, that does not provide for an exceptional educational experience for students and faculty and staff. And many of you told us that informally via email and in other surveys we've done. Secondly, there is uncertainty. We're hoped to be out of the red zone in the next couple of weeks or a month or two, but we don't know. A lot of this depends on how our communities behave and what they what we do and our own individual behaviors, and we'll talk about those in a moment. And finally, from the feedback we were receiving, our community and our board did not support this. And while certainly losing students is not our number one priority, it's very important. As a private school, it's both important financially and it's very important to our mission to educate and develop the whole student in the Catholic tradition, spirit, mind, and body. And we want to make sure we can impact as many families with a Bishop Kelly educational experience. So the second alternative we looked at was to continue with the current plan, all students on campus from day one. It was our assessment in talking to a number of folks that we can't increase the community spread because it's not just about us. There are 75,000 students in the Treasure Valley who want to be back in school, who the parents want them back in school. And if we did not execute our plan in a more thoughtful way, then we would be increasing that risk. It's not to say there isn't risk with the plan we have, but we feel with our plan and our execution, working together with our parents and our faculty and staff, we can do this. That's the second point. We need to do it right. You know, we don't want to be in a mode where we're going back to virtual learning because we did not execute what you, and I'll talk about some of the experts that we've talked to, feel is a very, very good plan. So that was a second alternative we considered.
And I would add, Rich, I mean, just
yeah,
you know, on the second one is we really see this as a marathon and not a sprint. Is what once we get to a point where we have 100% of our students on campus, we want to remain in that state. And so it's important for us to look at this in terms of a long game as opposed to a short game. One quote I hear Rich say often is move slow or start slow to move fast. And I think that's kind of our concern with if we just jump right into all students on campus from day one. We have a plan that's on paper and in theory sounds really good and we believe in it, but the devil's in the details and execution is key. And so that's why just a little bit more color commentary on bullet point 2 there.
Great points, Mike. Thank you. We also looked at delaying the start of school. But in our analysis, kids want to be back in school. Parents want them back in school. We have an excellent instructional plan. We're all ready to get started. It's also, we would lose instructional time or elongate the school year, neither of which are desirable. We're already concerned about instructional time with the plan we have for this during this pandemic period, and we just didn't feel that was a good solution. While some other school districts and our schools are doing that, we felt that for our community and our students, that was not desirable. So where we landed and what our red zone phase 3 approach is going to be, and Mike will talk in more detail in just a moment, is to phase in the approach to getting all students on campus. A couple of things that appeal to us about this. It allows us to educate students, staff, and families on these 3 W's. So wear masks, watch your distance, and wash your hands, and a number of protocols which we'll talk more about. Secondly, it gives us ability to practice and reinforce protocols with fewer students on campus initially, and then ramp up over a couple-week period to having all students on campus. As Mike said, we're in a marathon here, and we want to make sure we have long-term sustained success with in-person, in face-to-face learning, and we think this gives us a chance to do that. And the other reason that we want to have students on campus and get to where we have all students on campus is we're concerned about their health and all components of health, not just physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. And many of you have spoken to this, and American Academy of Pediatricians and a number of different experts in this field have said we also need to think about the mental health of this generation of students, which has been as challenging as it is. So when we put all that together, we said we are going to move forward, and got the approval of our board and shared it on Tuesday, and shared it with our faculty and staff, and working through that with them yesterday, and now we're sharing it with you. So that's what Mike's going to go into a little more specifics on what that looks like. And I'll pause if there's anything in the chat window, Katie, that we should talk about, or.
Yep, we're good.
Explain a little more on number 4. I hope I did that, Alejandra.
I answered that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about what this phase-in approach looks like? If I could make one comment before he does that. We knew that whatever option we chose, there would be risks. And it's important that we work together to mitigate those risks. We also knew that some people would applaud this decision. Some would want to happen faster. Some would want us to continue with the plan we had. And so just so you know, this is something we've worked really hard to achieve what we think is the best and right decision for our community, for our students, and our faculty and staff. So you may take issue with it. You may not like it. Please know we did it with the best intentions. Please trust us. Seek to understand why we're doing it, and then work with us and partner with us in making this a successful execution of what you've all told us is a very, very good plan.
Well said. So in addition to the 4 goals that Rich started with, our goals as part of this reopening plan is one, to acknowledge we are in category 3, red zone, if you will, from the Central District Health Guidelines. And so that, allows us or encourage us to pause and rethink the original plan that we had. One of our goals, and Rich mentioned this, is we want to help be a contributor, in a positive way to the greater Treasure Valley community. We have a responsibility to reduce spread, and so jumping right into all students on campus is contrary to that. While at the same time, we believe that we can execute our plan, but we're going to do it in a more phased approach. And this will also give us the time that we feel is necessary to provide additional education to our students and faculty, to reinforce our practice and our protocols, as Rich mentioned, and And also this plan aligns well with our K-8 partner schools in the Treasure Valley who are doing a similar phased-in approach in their instructional plan. And last, again, this is a long term. We're looking at this not long term, but looking at this more as a marathon as opposed to a sprint. And we want long term sustained success, so that once we do open completely, that we remain open because our plan is executed well. So those are some of the things in our thinking of as part of our phased reopening plan goals, in addition to the goals that Rich mentioned. So I'm going to take you through the first 5 weeks, and the first week being next week, which we're calling week 0, August 10th through the 14th. This week will really be focused on getting our faculty on board primarily as our first focus. We have a number of new teachers coming on board, and we'll be working with them both on Tuesday and Wednesday for new teacher orientation and training, and then all of our teachers return on Thursday and Friday for faculty in service. So that'll help us get prepared for our first week with students in classes, which is in week 1. Additionally, in week 0, we have historically always had a freshman academy. This year we're doing our freshman academy a little bit different. We're splitting our freshman class into 2 groups. So half of them will be here on Tuesday, the other half on Wednesday. And then within those 2 groups, we'll be splitting them up into 5 different groups. So we'll have groups of about 24 freshmen in some of our larger spaces, and our focus there is to get our freshmen prepared to be successful at Bishop Kelly in a variety of different areas. And we found that freshman academy is extremely important. Additionally, we have a number of new students joining us this year. So on Wednesday afternoon, we'll also have a new student orientation that will run in parallel to our freshman academy to get all of our new students comfortable and prepared for their education at Bishop Kelly. When we get into week 1, we've planned for Monday to be...
Mike, just a comment, just for parents to know, and this will be in a communication we'll follow up with tomorrow, but in the Freshman Academy, we had planned to have a mass and a Q&A session to help parents. We've had I think most all of you have been contacted by one of our parent ambassadors from our BKPA. They were going to be there, and we were going to have that. We think that's not appropriate given where we're at, so we will not be having a mass. We will be setting up a virtual similar orientation for our parents. Look for that next week, but we're really trying to simplify the Freshman Academy and not bring more people on campus than we need to, and find other ways to accomplish the same objective. So.
Yeah, so those freshman parents that are listening, for your students, it doesn't change anything. We still want them here at 8 o'clock, and we'll be done about 1 o'clock. What changes is we're not going to have a mass for freshman parents that morning. So just an FYI on that. Week 1 on Monday, we have our all-student orientation day, and so that's an opportunity that we'll take to really teach and reinforce our practices for that, in terms of protocol and those types of things. Our seniors start the morning from 8 to 9:30. We want all seniors on campus. We'll divide them up into 3 different groups by alpha. That information has already been sent. They'll report to different locations in our school, and we'll have different groups presenting information to them Monday. And then juniors follow, sophomores, and then freshmen. So they're spread out throughout the day. We're doing our orientation day a little bit different than we've done in the past, but that's Monday. And so that'll kind of help set the tone and expectations for students. And then the first day of school for our juniors and seniors will be Tuesday, April 18th. And as I walk through these different weeks, I'm going to put it in terms of blocks. In our block schedule covers 2 days, so we have A block and B block to get through our 7 periods. And so looking at this in terms of blocks, Tuesday and Wednesday is our first block. We'll just have juniors and seniors on campus that day, those 2 days, and that will be to They'll go through all of their classes just like they normally would, but it's, again, just juniors and seniors on campus those 2 days. Teachers will use that time to, as kind of a micro orientation, to work with our students to help prepare them on what the teacher expectations are, also to practice the protocols that we will be teaching on Monday. And freshmen and sophomores will be delayed 2 days as part of our phased reopening. So our freshmen and sophomores will not have online school or any school on that first Tuesday and Wednesday, August 18th and 19th. On the second block, Thursday and Friday of August 20th and 21st, our freshmen and sophomores will all be on campus. They'll go through their entire schedule on both Thursday and Friday. And juniors and seniors will be online Thursday and Friday. And what the previous block does is also helps prepare our juniors and seniors for expectations on online expectations. So they'll be online on Thursday and Friday. Freshmen and sophomores will be on campus. So next slide. Rich?
Yep.
Week 2, kind of similar. What we prioritized in this phased-in plan is keeping freshmen and sophomores on campus a little bit more than juniors and seniors, so it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. So block 3, freshmen and sophomores will remain on campus for on-campus learning, and then junior and seniors will be online for that block 3. We'll also have students, if by council recommendation, students that are on accommodations perhaps, or just other reasons, allow them to also be on campus. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, block 4, we'll have juniors and seniors back and freshmen and sophomores online. So that'll be the first time that our freshmen and sophomores will be online as opposed to on campus, but that'll give us actually 4 solid days to kind of get them ready to be online. And then block 5, again, go back to our freshmen and sophomores on campus, juniors and seniors online. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, which would be September 1st and 2nd of the 3rd week, we'll have juniors and seniors on campus and our freshmen and sophomores online. And by the end of that 3rd week, our goal is on September 3rd, Thursday, and September 4th on Friday. By that time, have all of our students have practiced our protocols. We've done some refinement as necessary on our processes and protocols. And our goal is to have all students on campus on Thursday, September 3rd and Friday, September 4th. And that will also be a learning experience that we may have to make some slight adjustments from there. And that gives us 3 days in our weekend to go into Labor Day weekend to make those changes as we come back on September 9th or September 8th on Tuesday after Labor Day, which we plan to have all students on campus going forward from there. So gets us to week 4. At that point, we feel that we have practiced and reinforced our expectations and our protocols, and we feel that we can have all students on campus successfully and safely moving forward from there. On this slide, it shows what a block looks like. So A day and B day consist of 1 full block. So they'll go through their 7 periods over that time period, over those 2 days. You'll see in those blocks that we have adjusted our times slightly since the last time we discussed, or since our last town hall meeting. Our A day starts at 8:15 and ends at 3:05. And our B day, we slid our teacher in service an earlier part of the day instead of the later part of the day. So our B day actually will start at 9:15 instead of 8:15. And then we'll finish class 7th period at 2:30 with the option for office hours. Our teachers will be available in classrooms from 2:30 to 3:05 or longer if necessary, but that provides a little bit more flex time for students to get additional help where needed. I did see a question, and one of the things that we're working on is not all classes are nice and tidy into either a sophomore level or a junior level or a senior level. We have plenty of mixed classes where, I'll take band for an example, where we might have grades 9 through 12 all in a band class. What we're working on is how to accommodate that, and in most cases when we have mixed classes, we're going to have them meet on campus face to face at the same on the same blocks that our freshmen and sophomores are meeting on campus. We're still fine-tuning that, but that's something we're working on. We're looking at all of our different classes and how mixed they are and what that mix is to determine when they should meet on campus. What we're trying to avoid is in one class setting. If I'm just put my teacher hat on for a second, if I was teaching a first period and I have some students that are on campus and some students are online, that's really difficult and it breaks up the cohesiveness of that instructional plan. And so what we're trying to do as much as possible is if we're on campus, all the students that are in that class are on campus, and if we're online, all those students are online. It's not a perfect solution the way it kind of laid it out. We have to accommodate or make plans for those mixed classes, and so we're still working on that.
Mike, if I could make a comment, and then that's only for 2.5 weeks, right? So just work with us through this first couple of weeks as we phase in to get to where we have all students on campus. And it's also, you know, it's a tricky thing to do for a lot of schools, and trying to figure out, do you do it by alphabet, do you do it by class? You know, so we found this was the best way that we could manage it and work on those mixed classes as we can. So.
Yeah. All right, next slide. So this gets into some of the protocols and processes that we'll be reinforcing and teaching our students as well as our faculty and staff. Rich mentioned the 3 W's: wear a mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands. That will be an ongoing educational process and reinforcement expectations in our school. Some of the things that we're doing a little bit different, or in some cases drastically different this year. One is we're only assigning academic lockers kind of by exception as opposed to by rule. And the purpose of that is, and the thinking behind that is, one is students only have four classes a day as opposed to 7. And most of our textbooks are online. So it's not like the olden days when you had, 50-pound backpacks and those types of things, especially with only 4 classes a day. We also really want to keep movement in halls, that their halls are not gathering places or not hangout places, and students are going through hallways to get from point A to point B. And we don't want to make lockers an issue or create a space where that kind of, if we have by having lockers, it also narrows our hallways when students are using those. So we're not going to be assigning lockers unless by special exception for certain reasons or for required reasons. We'll also be instituting regular desk cleaning after every period. Lunch service will be done differently this year. We're looking at a couple different models to really break up any sort of large group congregations and gatherings. So we're looking at a couple different models, and that one in particular is just mobile service, so having different locations throughout the school where students can go get food, as opposed to all students going to the cafeteria. We will have more restrictions and really limiting visitors on campus. And then, I saw a question. We actually talked to Central District Health today about temperature checks. We're not instituting regular temperature checks as students come in. That is actually, this Central District Health is no longer advising that. They're actually advising that it's not as reliable and if Rich would add anything to that, but we're not doing temperature checks. What we would, and this is where the partnership really comes in, what we're really asking parents is to be really diligent on monitoring your students or your kids before they come to school, and making sure that they're not coming to school with high temperatures or any other symptoms that could lead to them being sick. And then our teachers will have face shields, panels as requested in addition to face masks. And then all this is in addition to the investments we've made, including investments into our HVAC system and ionization equipment that has been shown to kill a high rate of pathogens, including those in COVID-19, and we'll be installing those in our HVAC system to have our air duct or air clean more regularly and thoroughly than our current system. Rich, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I think the parent partnership around, we can only do what we can control here at the school. And trust me, we will do everything we can to make sure kids both know the expectations, and there'll be consequences if they're not wearing a mask or they're not social distancing, those kinds of things. But when they leave school, everything from when they first go to the parking lot, to who they drive to school with, to what you do at home, we could lose a lot if we're not consistent and supported by what you do to have similar practices at home. We all want our schools to open and stay open, and we need each of us to do our part, including parents and families. So again, this partnership, that second big bullet down there, we need you to be adopting and reinforcing the similar practices at home. And I know that's not always the case, and it's hard. They're teenagers, they're by nature social. But as we get through, in particular, this red zone time, it's really important that we all work together to do this. And whether you believe the science or not, whether you have your own view of it, we're asking that you do as asked with mask distancing and hygiene. And I can tell you, we'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but I truly do believe that if we do this, and we've got a lot of data that tells us this from around the world, wearing masks, watching distance, and washing hands can turn around the community spread that we're seeing today. We're already seeing some early indications of that in some of the numbers that when I talk to health professionals, and many of you know I serve on the St. Luke's board, and we talk a lot about what are the things we can do as a community to reduce spread. But we have to partner together to do that.
So Rich, somebody mentioned, I think it's your desktop. If you could make sure you're in presentation mode, we can just see your tabs. I don't know if
Oh,
I thought you were.
thought I was too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's.
Don't you like my tabs? How's that?
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
All right, let's proceed, and then there's some questions that are coming up we'll come back to at the end.
So let me tell you a little bit of, we've spent probably 5 months with Central District Health working on our plan, and as recently as this afternoon, another hour with Gina Pinnell, who's a school liaison for Central District Health, who has been remarkable to work with. We've also spent a lot of time, and Mike and I spent a couple hours reviewing this with Dr. David Pate, who's a former CEO, retired CEO from St. Luke's, who's also on the governor's coronavirus task force, getting his feedback and help in refining our plan, and with others at both St. Al's, St. Alphonsus, and St. Luke's, and helping us do that. And we have a wonderful nurse, Mary Lou Cunningham, who's been with us every step of the way on this. So as we work through this, this is the statement that from Central District Health on our plan. I want to read it to you because I think it's important that we're not doing this in a vacuum, and we're doing this with the professionals that are setting advisory, giving us advice on what to do. So Central District Health has worked closely with Bishop Kelly High School leaders regarding plans for the upcoming in-person return to school. While CDH's role is to not approve or endorse reopening plans of this nature, they've reviewed our detailed plans and recognized the thorough attention given in all capacities to providing as safe and healthy as environment as possible for students and staff amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. These decisions are extremely complex and challenging to make, and none is without impact. CDH applauds the dedication of all schools and school districts for their commitment to balancing the critical need for consistent education, socialization, and support with the safest and healthiest possible learning environments. So I think it's important, as I said at the beginning, while the advice in Zone 3 is to consider moving online, we've worked with them to help So they don't endorse or support or approve plans, but they want you to know. And they were very comfortable with us sharing this with our community. So let's move now to Mike. You want to touch on some of the Q&As we're already working on, some things that we have, and then we'll open it up to both what's online and other questions that you may have and can certainly give us through the survey.
Yeah, one common question that I think is something that most people would want to know or should ask is what are those triggering events, parameters, or metrics that would cause us to go fully online, and when? And in our conversation today with CDH, I think everybody sometimes wants to know, if X, then Y kind of thinking. And the reality in this situation, it's a week-to-week meeting with CDH to learn more and to make decisions based on the information that we have at that moment. So what we don't have is a hard and fast objective metric to say, if we get to this, then we'll do this. We're going to have to just stay on top of this, continue to stay diligent and learning about this virus, and learning from Central District Health and others, learning from what we experience in our own plan, and make that decision as necessary. Our hope is that we won't go fully online, and we believe that if we execute our plan well, then we're going to have a very successful school year with students on campus. If we need to, based on the information that at the present time, we will. And but we're going to do everything we can to keep kids on campus and keep everyone safe and healthy along the way. Another question that oftentimes comes up is, what is our plan for those during our phased reopening plan while we're in Category 3 for students or families who are immunocompromised or not comfortable coming to school while in the red category? We've mentioned this, and we're still fine-tuning some of that, but long-term, we're still not offering a fully online model in parallel with our educational plan. However, during this red period, this Category 3 period, we want to institute as much flexibility as we can. So if we have a handful of students that choose to stay home until we get into the yellow, we want to work with those students. And the same is with our high-risk faculty that are up there in age or have other underlying conditions. We want to work with them as well. So we're working on different plans to accommodate both students and faculty and staff in those high-risk areas, or that are choosing, in case of students choosing to do an online option as opposed to face-to-face option. But I want to clarify that would be a temporary a solution. Long-term, when we get into more Category 2 or yellow, we don't intend to have a full-time online option at Bishop Kelly. So I think that's important to know. There is the diocese in most of our K-8 schools, or all of our K-8 Catholic schools, and as well as Bishop Kelly, are being asked to have our parents sign an acknowledgement of risk form. I don't know if, Rich, you want to touch on that, but that's kind of in process and something we've been discussing of how and when we go forth with that.
So we'll have a plan to put that online so you can do that. We would ask that you do. It's not a waiver and a waiver of liability. It's just an acknowledgement of risk. Very, very common amongst various activities that your students are probably involved in right now. So we would ask that you do that. Mike, a couple of things that have come up during the time. We'll turn to the chat window in a minute. A number of questions on mixed class periods. I think Mike addressed that well. We've talked about a student handbook with the details of the plan that should be out early next week. The information on the plan and FAQs, things that are more specific, and responding to some of the questions that you're both asking online and what you may ask through the survey. You'll should be expected to see a beginning of that published tomorrow by midday on BK Alive and on bk.org. We're still fine tuning the timing and protocols with this phase reopened for bus service. And so expect something in the next, by early next week on that. And then finally, we will, any other additional questions that you have via the survey, or we'll get to the ones that are in the chat window now. We will continue to update that on our website. I will just maybe close this Q&A until we open it up. Communication is incredibly important. I know to you as parents and to us as school administrators and teachers and staff, and we're committed to continue to communicate on a regular, open, transparent basis with you when we know what we know and what we don't know. And I can tell you there are things we don't know today that will continue to work as we approach the start of school on the 17th of August. So with that, maybe Mike,
Yeah, let me touch on a couple of questions. I think one question that I saw earlier, what happens if a student or teacher is test positive? What will be the reaction? We anticipate that's going to happen at some point this year. We're going to have a student or faculty member test positive. The key word in terms of response to that is exposure. And if someone has been exposed to that, someone tested positive, then they would be in quarantine. Exposure has two elements, duration and proximity. If someone is inside of 6 foot in proximity for a duration of 15 minutes, that is considered exposed, or if they've been directly contacted. In our plan, if we execute it as we hope to, or we expect to, we should have very little exposure because by design, our classes should have all students distanced, and we shouldn't have anyone inside of 6 foot for a longer period of 15 minutes. In passing periods, we'll be staggering passing periods so that there's short duration of time where people would be close to each other, and even in that, it'll be we'll have students going, in different directions on the opposite side of the halls, and I think we'll have a good way of controlling that to minimize any sort of proximity concerns. So what we don't anticipate is sending the whole school in quarantine because one person tests positive. We believe our plan anticipates that, and we'll be able to continue school as planned with that. I think one of the key things with that, we need our students and our faculty and staff to have a mindset that anybody next to them might be positive, and that they have a responsibility to keep themselves safe, and they also have a responsibility to keep those around them safe. And as long as we take that to heart and take that serious, I think we'll run into fewer issues with exposure. And then question I think we've addressed, why do we feel it's safe to have students back in school when other schools are delaying or starting school online? And I think the short answer to that is not all schools are the same. West Data or a Boise school district is very different than a Bishop Kelly High School in terms of our plan, what we've done over the summer to add additional faculty, to get our class sizes down, and and a small school district in rural Idaho is very different than Bishop Kelly. Every school has to look at their situation, their school, their facilities, and everything that's built into the plan, and base our decisions based on what our school situation and not what other schools are doing. And I think Gina at Central District Health would say the same thing. Every school is very unique and different, and we feel that we can open safely, especially with our phased-in plan.
Mike, I would add two things. One, there are a number of different school districts around the area with differing plans similar to ours or some version of what we're doing. And also, we're we're not planning on this, but we're hopeful. The same sorts of things we'd have to do in stage 2, we're doing in stage 3. And we hope that by doing that. So this is practicing again and building capabilities and protocols for the long term. And going back to those original objectives and the reason we chose alternative 4, I think is important to keep in mind that we felt the overall, it allows us to educate and get people really up to speed on 3Ws and protocols, and allows us to practice those. We set ourselves up for long-term success, and we're looking at all the components of students' health: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. So other questions, Mike?
Somebody asked about windows being open. Any chance of that? Short answer is yes. We want as much airflow in our school, in our classrooms as possible. And we also are going to encourage our teachers whenever possible to have classes outside when feasible. That doesn't make sense for all classes, but that's while our weather is good, we want to take advantage of that, especially early in the school year right now. Somebody asked about masks. We are requiring masks throughout the day. There will be, exceptions during lunch, of course, and we're also going to be encouraging students as much as possible to eat outside and safely distance each other. They will be eating in groups, but they can eat in groups and still be 6 feet apart. But utilizing our outdoor space as much as possible, especially, like I said, in these first couple months of our fall. Somebody asked about students moving in cohorts. That's not, we considered that, and that's not going to be the case for us. We just have too many students mixed in different classes. The cohort model doesn't really make sense for our high school. I don't know if other high schools have been able to pull that off. I understand the logic in it and it makes sense, but we're not moving students around in cohorts. Trying to look for other questions that maybe weren't answered.
Maybe, Mike, if there's not any other questions, maybe let me just wrap it up here. We're at the 55-minute mark, and if there's something else that comes in, but I just want to first and foremost thank you all for caring enough about your sons and daughters and their health and well-being, and our faculty and staff and our broader community. And thank you for being here today and joining us on this virtual town hall. There will be a follow-up survey, as I mentioned, so please help us get better at this and help us answer the questions that you have. As Mike mentioned, this will be recorded and it'll be available on bk.org. And please keep an eye out for a BK Alive tomorrow. And much of this will be on bk.org to continue the communication flowing. As I said at the beginning, no, there's no perfect answer. We've never worked our way through a pandemic as a school or us as a society. So please know we have your students and our faculty and staff and our community's best interests at heart for an educational experience, for keeping them safe and healthy. And I hope you trust us and that we'll work together to execute this plan. You've all told us it's a great plan. Now it's up to all of us to work on executing it so we can stay open for the long term with all kids on campus after a couple of weeks of this phased-in transition. So I'll leave it at that. And Mike, anything else you want to add?
A couple questions that were overlooked. I think there was one question about siblings and writing together. We will accommodate that. So if you have siblings, in different groups, and they will have places for them to work online, and if they're not expected to be in class and those types of things, so we can work with that. There's also some questions about sports. As you probably know, that there's two parts to the sports. One is the activities and the practices and those types of things, and then games in terms of students or fans and those types of things. I'll answer the latter first. Is that there isn't yet a decision or a plan, at least ready to be published on fans. We're really fortunate that we have 2 Pixelot systems. So if we were to have games, hopefully we will at some point this fall. We do have the broadcasting capabilities for home games, both in the gym as well as on the field. In most cases, that doesn't account for all sports, of course, but and then in terms of practices, we have delayed the SIC, as all agreed to delay the start of sports to August 17th as opposed to August 10th to give us additional time. And we've also put in a lot of practices and protocols for conditioning and workouts that were implemented over the summer without any positive tests over the summer. However, that's not to say that having sports, there's going to be inherent risk in virus transmission. I mean, we're not going to be able to, if we're playing contact sports like football or even other sports like volleyball and soccer, those sports will not always have a 6-foot separation. We do require our coaches to wear masks, but in the case of athletes, they're not wearing masks when they're competing. It's just not safe in that case. So sports are a difficult challenge all in of itself, but we're trying to balance that with the mental health and the desire to have students still remaining active and also connected with their peers, and sports and activities are a huge part of that. And it's a difficult question to answer because on one hand we are limiting some time in the classroom, but also trying to have sports, and I understand the conundrum that creates. Sports, there's probably still more questions than answers, and I'm not clear on exactly how we're going to move forward with fall sports this year, but I hope that we are able to, because I know it's how important it is for our kids. All right. Other questions? Maybe take a couple more, and then we'll do the other ones on our frequently asked questions. Yeah. Question on the instructional time that I missed earlier, or that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the trade-off with teacher time and the longer passing periods and those types of things. That it is a significant reduction in time. We have our board could choose, and I don't believe that is on the table right now, to choose to extend our school year to make up for that time, or potentially our board could choose to limit our Thanksgiving break or our Christmas break. I don't believe our board is interested in going back and changing our calendar at this time. However, that is a board decision, and if they chose to extend our school year into June because of our lost instructional time from our schedule, that's certainly something we would have to work with. But I don't believe that that's going to be something our board entertains this year. I don't believe our community would desire to have a shorter Thanksgiving break or Christmas break, or go too much further into June for our school year. So at this point, we are not looking at changing our calendar to adjust from the lost instructional time.
So Mike, we're at the bottom of the hour now. I would suggest we bring this to a close, and thank you again for your time. Look for the follow-up survey. If you want to listen to this again, or you have friends who didn't, the recording will be on bk.org. We will make sure your questions are answered, and the FAQs that we'll continue to update. We make that a live document, so keep your questions. Please fill out the survey and let us know your concerns. And once again, thank you for entrusting your sons and daughters to Bishop Kelly and our team here. And we look forward to working in partnership with you to make this a very, very successful school year in the midst of a pandemic. So thank you again. And with that, we'll close the meeting. Have a nice evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you all and your sons and daughters in the coming weeks. Take care.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.